So hello everybody, I'm John Wardle. I'm the director of the National Film and Television School, and it's a great pleasure to welcome you to this session about post-production supervision. We've got a really brilliant panel with us today, all of who have been involved in thinking up this new course. Oh, look, I get distracted by these comments in the chat. Well, greetings from Venezuela, that's amazing. It's fantastic to welcome you all here. I'm joined by Cynthia from Warner Media and HBO, Alison from Netflix, and Gemma, who's our course leader of our new course, and she'll tell you more about that, but also from Post Super, which you can find out about. So we've got about an hour and 15 minutes, I think, for this, and the plan is to talk a bit about what the world of post-production management looks like, and then we'll talk more specifically about the course. Lots of opportunities for people to ask questions. So if you want to do that, so we don't miss it in the chat function, there's a button at the bottom of your screen which says Q&A. If you ask a question in there, I'll definitely see it and I'll be able to ask your question of the panel as we go along. Whereas in the chat, sometimes it gets a bit lost. So if you want to ask a question, then please do that through the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. So, why don't we get started by asking our panel to kind of say a bit about who they are and why they're here. So Cynthia or Alison, which of you wants to go first?
Cynthia.
I was gonna say, I'll jump in. I have been at HBO since 1994. And before that, I actually started out in production. At 26, I decided that I had to switch from being a management consultant and an accountant because I really didn't enjoy it, and started over as a PA on the production side and worked my way up on the production side to the point where I was line producing some low budget things and I knew nothing about post. I did not even understand that the cost when I budgeted was that I had to allow for work print as a separate cost from developing. So I really knew nothing. And I worked as the apprentice editor on the film that I was producing. And I was lucky enough to have a wonderful mentor down the hall at Amblin, and Marty Cohen would help me whenever I asked. And ultimately, from there, I realized that I really loved post-production. In fact, I liked it even better than production, and it made more sense with my life. And I went on to work at Kings Road Entertainment, and then I freelanced. And as I was freelancing on a show for HBO, a film, they needed a new head of post-production for the films group. Back then, I don't even think there was a series in fact, there wasn't a series post-production person at HBO. I joined, and I've had the joy of working there on both films and series ever since. What's your day-to-day responsibilities now, Cynthia? Because you look after a certain patch of production. So for HBO, all of us work on both films and series, and we each oversee a large group of films and series. I've done at this point well over 100, but the current projects that are mine will be The Gilded Age when it comes out, Coastal Elites, which came out this weekend, but also My Brilliant Friend, His Dark Materials. I do most of the films that we have, and way back when we were doing things like Maria Full of Grace and American Splendor and a lot of theatricals that HBO at the time also did.
Right.
And I oversee, the group that takes in delivery and a lot of the technology stuff.
And you mentioned His Dark Materials, but a lot of the shows you're working on are London or UK based, is that right?
That's true. We did Undoing is wrapping up, CB Strike Lethal White is wrapping up. And interestingly, over the last, say, 3 years, I have not had anything in California and only one thing in New York. Everything else has been in Europe.
Right. Long may that continue, Cynthia. Cool. Alison, how about you? Tell us a bit about how you got started and what you're doing now.
So I'll start with, what I'm doing now is I'm at Netflix. I'm the director of post here based in the UK. I relocated from New York for the job last January, but I'm half British, which you could never tell from my accent because I left here when I was 8 and was teased mercilessly, and so that's gone. But I'm very happy to be back here in the UK. I've been lucky enough to work over the years on projects that have been here. There's just so much great post-production and production in the UK. So very, very happy to be back. I last worked on a project, a film called The Nutcracker and the Four Realms for Disney, which was shot here in the UK. We did the post back in New York. So that was the last film I did as a freelancer. So I've freelanced, and I've also been on the studio side previous to Netflix. I used to run post at the Weinstein Company and also was a post exec at Focus Features, which was another New York-based studio. So I was in New York in post starting in 2003 and just kept doing sort of back and forth studio, freelance, and then now I'm over here continuing the thing. And probably the show that maybe some of you know that I've been very focused on here at Netflix, hands-on, is The Witcher, which came out right before Christmas last year. We're working on season 2 right now. And then there's, a whole host of series and films that we're doing here in the UK. The Duchess just launched this past weekend, which was quite fun. Catherine Ryan show, which was made here. So that's just, some of the titles we're doing.
And Alison, is your appointment in UK and Europe kind of a symbol of Netflix's kind of ambitions to make even more kind of content in the UK?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are around the world really investing in production in each individual country. And it's really important to us to be working with people locally, building up the local crew bases and talent communities. So yes, absolutely, for sure.
Great. And then Gemma, tell us a bit about what your background and what you're doing now.
There's nothing as illustrious as Alison and Cynthia. I started in the cutting room about almost 20 years ago. I started on a really, really big budget, Harry Potter's, that kind of stuff, Batman, those kind of projects. And I was very lucky. I kept on working in the sound department. And about 9 years ago, I moved over to being a post coordinator, working with a fantastic post supervisor at the time called Katie Reynolds. And I was head coordinator. We did things like Cinderella and Tarzan, and worked for Tim Burton, and it was a fantastic run. And I very gradually then moved over to being a post supervisor, and I have worked on all different levels of stuff, not as a post coordinator and as a post supervisor. So I've worked on film, I've worked on high budget TV, I've worked on low budget TV. I've had a brilliant time. And one thing that I've done recently is that I've started Post Super, which is an online community for post supervisors and coordinators. And we're there to provide the 3 things: information, training and tools for post supervisors to support the industry, and to try and make sure that we can kind of support the next generation of people coming through as well. That's me.
Thanks, Gemma. So I want to rewind back, because Cynthia, you and I met, it feels like a lifetime ago, but you and I met when you were over in London to do a talk at the BFI. And we were talking about we both separately had this thought that it would be good to create a course in the area of post-production supervision. Why was it something, Cynthia, so before we talk about the course itself, why did you think it was the right time to do something like that now?
Well, interestingly, as I said, I'd been doing a lot of shows in the UK, and there's always a challenge finding a good post team, and not because people aren't well trained or great, because they are, but there aren't that many of them. And in the last few years, in part with Netflix, but also with Amazon and Hulu and other streaming platforms, post has exploded in the UK particularly. And what that's meant is, with so much more product being created, you need more people to work on it. And then in addition to that, this style of some of these really big shows, whether it's a Game of Thrones type of show, or His Dark Materials, or, you know, any Black Mirror, they're the kinds of big shows that you can't work on multiple projects at once, which had been the traditional system in the UK, that you had the same post person working on 2 or 3 projects, which, when it was a small film or perhaps a small series, was doable. But the combination of those 2 things meant that, you know, there's about 20 well-known post supers and about 50 or more shows going on, and we were running into problems. So that was one of the pieces. And the other piece was looking around and realizing that there wasn't a lot of diversity in the people that I was working with. A lot of them, interestingly, unlike the rest of the film community, a lot of them were women, but not necessarily from different backgrounds, and really challenging if you were outside of London. And so the idea of trying to come up with a way to explain post-production, not just to producers and directors who are in their course and in the last weeks of their producing course, here's the 5 minutes about post-production. It was really about saying, hey, this is a tract that exists, that you can earn a living from, that is a professional stream of work, that's really exciting and interesting. And how do we get that word out there? And how do we train people to come and do it? And that's why I reached out to you guys, because it's such a great place to go to school and learn about it.
Cool, that's excellent. So we've got 100 people watching us now. So I just want to say, if you've just joined us, if you want to ask a question at any point, just put it in the Q&A button, and I'll make sure I pick that up as we go. So Alison, coming to you. So Cynthia's told us what the kind of opportunity is, but I'm sure there will still be people on this Zoom who don't really know what a post supervisor does. We know what an editor does, and we know what maybe a dubbing mixer does and a composer. What does a post supervisor do? What's their responsibility on a show?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we all need to know on this webinar. So thanks for the question, John. So I would say the post supervisor, in my mind, having been a post supervisor myself as well, is really the hub during post production. You're not taking the role of the producer, but you are that producerial presence throughout post production. You're involved, hopefully, in our mind, in Cynthia and my and Gemma's mind's eye, from the pre-production stage. So before there is anything shot, you're figuring out the workflow, you're sorting out the crewing, you're making the deals, you're signing off on the budget and the schedule, creating a path for a smooth post-production process. During the shoot, it's a different role, whether you're on series or on a film. Because series, you're really rolling episode to episode. So the shoot, it might vary, but basically you're then overseeing the day-to-day of the whole post process, which is the editing, the sound, music, visual effects, titles, the color, the finishing of the final element. So you're really responsible for the budget, the schedule, the execution, and most importantly, the communication between all of the creative personnel and all the crew who are making the project during post.
And you said that you're involved in the shoot, and that might be a surprise to some people, because people often think that post is the thing that happens when all the kind of stuff on sets happen. But as a post supervisor, you would be hired well before the shooting or during the shooting. How does that work?
Yeah, ideally you should be hired well before the shooting. You know, the projects, especially on a Netflix production, and maybe I can say also for HBO production, we want the input of the post supervisor before we lock a budget, and also to do the first pass of the schedule and, you know, work closely with us on that schedule and timeline. They're also sometimes involved in recommending the crew, the post-production crew, so they can be a really pivotal part of the process. And then most importantly, I would say, is the technical workflow. So your post-production, you know, everybody thinks it's a huge technical job, which it is, and it will not go well if you do not set it up well. So that's a huge part, working with the director of photography, if they're visual effects, working with the visual effects team, and setting up the color pipeline, the technical pipeline, securing the safety of the digital negative, all of that technical part of the process.
So you're, in simple terms, I feel like you're the kind of person who's to make sure that nobody says, let's just sort that out in post. That one of your jobs is to be on set to make sure decisions are made early enough so that it's a smooth process through.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a phrase, fix it in post, which I think we all rail against. And at Netflix, one of the earliest heads of post-production had a poster on his wall that said, fix it in prep.
Yeah.
It was post crossed out and he wrote prep instead. So that's what we try to promote.
That's good. And Cynthia, who are the key kind of relationships at a senior level for a post supervisor? Are you working closely with the director of the show, with the producer of all of these people?
You work with everybody, and I agree with Alison. One of the things that is really, really key, and for us in post, we get the script the same time production gets the script, because you have to have those conversations and think about, is this visual effects? Is this going to be production? And if it's visual effects, oftentimes, and it depends on the studio with whom you work, you may be responsible for helping oversee that, and certainly allowing in the schedule and the budget for those visual effects things to happen. So you have to have that planning done in prep, so that although we're not physically on set, we're helping navigate through that process and allowing for the right amount of time. A show, for example, that has a lot of visual effects may need a longer post schedule in order to complete them. So those conversations happen in prep. And as to the relationships, you get that information by having relationship with the producer, with the director, with the cinematographer. Of course, on our shows, oftentimes the post supervisor is helping to put together the lists and helping us think about who are the editors that we're putting together, because as is true in so many parts of the business, how you choose the personalities to make that work and make it a really cohesive team is important. And the post super is often the one who knows those people really well. So it's without a doubt true that the post super doesn't have the final say in hiring the editor or whatnot. But they are an integral part of that. And you have oftentimes, and most of the time, should have a relationship with the visual effects team, with the composer, with the director. And as someone who started out in production and debated between being a line producer and a post supervisor, one of the turning points for me was the relationship with the director. Because as a line producer, my job was to sit there and go, okay, did we get the first shot off? Was it come on, we got to get moving, you're going slow. And it sometimes felt a little adversarial. But when you got to post, the director either had done a great job and you had everything you needed, and then post was really fun and exciting and they were having a good time, or they didn't and they needed you to help figure it out. So in either case, you had this very different relationship with the director, and instead of dealing with 100 or 200 people, you're dealing with, you know, between 5 and 30 people. And so that's a much more intimate relationship.
And when you hire a post supervisor for a show and they get given the script, is one of the first things you would do they do a breakdown? Is that the kind of thing that you would do of what are the visual effects elements, just to kind of bring it alive for people? Is that what you're doing when you're given a script and brought onto a project? How do you find
I mean, lots of people are reading it and doing their own breakdowns. Certainly a good post super reads a script and does a breakdown for themselves. Whether the show uses it as the archetypal breakdown for that whole thing may depend, but without question, a post super in reading a script looks at it and when I did locations, I remember never being able to watch a movie and not worry about where the parking was for the trucks and thinking about, oh shoot, where are we good? I know where they did that. And it took me years to get past thinking of it that way. When you're a post super and you look at the script, you're very likely to go, oh my God, that's a lot of visual effects. Or, oh, wow, they're gonna need a lot of ADR there. And so those kinds of things are really important. Archival footage, playback, on-camera music, locations, set extensions, all sorts of things, aging, period, all of those things start running through your head as you're looking at it and help you figure out, do I have enough time? What do I need to budget? What do I need to talk to the producers about? And in some cases, even we've gone back and said to the writers and the executive producers and creators to say, you may not be able to achieve this in the time frame you want. What if we did this? You know, and so that's why for us at HBO, and I'm sure it's true in other places as well, is a really integral part of those conversations to make sure that holistically we're achieving what we want to achieve.
And Alison, how does the budget and the schedule actually come together? So you're hired to do a Witcher, for example. I guess the show as a whole has a budget, and then are you apportioned something and you have to make that work, or do you do the work to say what it needs and then there's a negotiation? How does it sort?
Only there was one systematic way that works. But, I would say different on every production and probably every situation. But yeah, there's always the post portion of the budget. At Netflix, we also look after the film and lab section, which is about how we process the negative, whether it's digital or film. So we look after that budget line too. So it's really, I mean, I always you can't do a budget really unless you have a schedule. So I do a schedule first, and having read the script and seeing if there's any, you know, how much am I going to put in for stock footage? How much ADR do I think is going to be in there? All the things that Cynthia mentioned. And you see what your schedule is, figure out what your crew is going to be, and then you do your first budget based on that. And then it's a process of back and forth with, whether it's the studio or the producer to get to the number that everybody's happy with for the full project.
And one of the attendees, I'm going to pick off some of the questions as we go through. One of the attendees has said, how long did it take you to be able to do that sort of breakdown, that sort of initial budget and schedule kind of in your sleep? When did it become kind of a natural thing to read a script in that way?
I would say for me, I got really into the rhythm of it when I was at the Weinstein Company the first time, because of sheer volume. I had to do like one a week. And so it was just like, okay, well, now I'm doing this. So, The thing that I like about post is it's quite contained versus doing a breakdown for a shooting budget. There are so many more variables, and for post, I think it's less complicated. I mean, the visual effects breakdown can be more complicated. That's a very specific sort of subset of a post breakdown, but you can get pretty good, I would say, in a couple of months, breaking down what needs to go in a post budget. I think the scheduling part is more of an art form, especially series scheduling, and seeing there's so many ways to schedule a series, different shooting patterns, editor patterns, and that I think takes a little bit longer. But each project is unique, and it's a lifelong learning, basically.
And we've been talking about the post supervisor role, but there are other people in the post management team, isn't there? Particularly on a big show like The Witcher or His Dark Materials. So Cynthia, maybe do you want to talk about what a typical team would look like on something like His Dark Materials?
Yeah, and I think it's different between a film and a series, just to start out with, and it's different between a smaller film and a bigger film. So I'll jump in because that's the easy part. So post-supering on a film, it may just be a post-super and a PA, or a post-super and a coordinator. Usually we like to have a team of at least 3 in the management, so post-super, coordinator, and PA. But if it's a big Harry Potter type thing, you may have more people than that. On a series, because you're working on so many pieces at once, where on a film it's very linear. You're prep, then you're in production, and then you're in post. On a series, you're doing that simultaneously with, perhaps 10 episodes. So depending on how you're shooting, as Alison said, every show is different, and we joke that they're all snowflakes, and each one melts by the time you finish it. So it's never to be used again, the process you figure out. You may be shooting episodically, which is the easiest. So you have an episodic pattern budget, and they shoot the same number of days. They shoot 10 days, and it goes on. But what that means is, while you're prepping one, you're shooting another, you're posting another, and as you keep rippling through, you may have 3, 4, 5 episodes that are in post at the same time in various stages of post, and that requires you to have a larger crew. And therefore you have usually in the States, it's usually a co-producer credit or an associate producer credit, but we call it a number 1. And then you have a number 2, so the number 1 is often, leading the whole team, overviewing sound, and keeping track of things. The number 2 may be looking after the picture side of things and organizing all of that. The number 3, which is the coordinator position, is doing the credits and the ADR scheduling on all of that. And then you have PAs. Now, on a show that has big visual effects, I right now have I think I have a team of 7 or 8 on His Dark Materials at the moment. So because that's one show, lots of episodes, many hundreds of visual effects, what's called CDR, which are the animated characters that have to be recorded, as well as the ADR, which is the additional dialogue recording for the actors you see on screen. So it gets very complicated trying to get all of that done at once.
Wow. And then is your job over at the point the thing is color graded and mixed, or is it much more complicated than that because of the amount of deliverables that have to be handed over to whoever's putting it out on, whether it's Netflix or HBO broadcast?
It's well, and the challenge is you have broadcast and you have streaming. So oftentimes you have lots of different responsibilities. So yes, absolutely, it continues after you've done the first delivery. You may be delivering to multiple people on His Dark Materials. The team has to deliver to us and the BBC, and then we take it on for the rest of the world. So you have multiple deliveries, and they go all the way through the paperwork delivery, which is something that I think on American shows, we tend to have our post team do all of the paperwork delivery. In some of the UK shows, they may have a separate person do that. But there's a lot to be done.
Alison, with Netflix having its own platform kind of globally, does that make it simpler or harder on a show like The Witcher? Are you delivering one show, or is there multiple versions?
Yeah, no, we do a lot of different types of productions, but the majority of the productions are solely for Netflix, and you're just delivering to Netflix, and it's really, we're down to a main delivery element. So it's pretty streamlined to deliver to Netflix. I think people sometimes fear it, but it's we can explain it to anybody. It's not that hard. And luckily there are not so many different versions you have to do for all different people. We do some co-productions, or sometimes we do license material that, was produced for another content provider. So there are some shows where they've got multiple things, but the majority of ours are just for Netflix, and it's pretty streamlined.
So what are the kind of key skills, both maybe hard in terms of kind of software or budgeting, and maybe softer in terms of communication? What are the key skills you need to be an effective post supervisor? Who wants to? I'm going to come to you in a minute, Gemma, when we talk about the course. But Alison, Cynthia, I'm
fascinated. This is fun.
What have you been looking for as you've been hiring these people? What are the kind of qualities you need to see in people who are going to be good at this?
I guess I'll jump in. I mean, the number one thing is organization and a good, patient, unruffled personality. You have to be cool as a cucumber in the face of extreme difficulty. So that's the main thing that I interview people for is how do you react if somebody says, you've made a whole plan, everything is set, and then the director or producer is going to come to you and just say, I have a new idea. I want to completely, now I want to go left. And you have to be able in that moment to see the enthusiasm and match it with them and be as enthusiastic about their idea, support them while also juggling the studio or whoever's going to pay for this, and try to come, you've got to come to a middle ground. You're the ultimate, sort of negotiator and person to try to appease everybody, to make everything work for everybody. And that is a real skill that is, I think some people have innately in them. So yeah, be able to be enthusiastic, to be diplomatic, to be unruffled. I would say the main things: communicator, great communicator. You need to be good with numbers. I would say the budgets are pretty simple, all things considered, but as Gemma will talk through, there's tracking the budget is your responsibility, and you need to be responsible to the financier or the studio that you're on budget. Obviously is very important. The scheduling skills are often done in Excel or Google Sheets. The programs are pretty simple. Budget, again, Excel or Movie Magic Budgeting, which is sort of the one program that's really useful for people as a post supervisor. So those are the things that come to mind first. Cynthia, I don't know if you have anything.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of those. And I have to say, I was lucky enough to work with Alison as a post super on a film for me. And she was amazingly unruffled and organized throughout it, and really good at tracking things. And those are the things you look for. You look for someone who loves to solve problems, and is a great communicator and really organized and really good with people and people skills. I've had post supers who didn't have those skills, and they might have been, you know, great organizationally or really good on a computer and dealing with stuff. And invariably it doesn't work out, because you need to be able to support the director, the writer in some cases, and certainly the executive producers. And if you can't have conversations that inspire confidence and comfort in those people and in the studio, it's a moot point. You can be amazing at tracking your numbers and tracking your budget, but if the producer, the director doesn't want to have a conversation with you, you're not going to be able to do your job.
And one thing I would just love to throw in there too is, I see someone else put in the chat, is about technical proficiency. And I think it's interesting because this role is managing a lot of technical processes and a lot of real professionals who know the ins and outs of so many programs. I would not underestimate the importance of understanding what they're doing, but the level, you don't need to know how to use those programs. You don't need to know how to use Avid. You don't need to know how to use Pro Tools. You don't need to know how to color anything or do a visual effect. The thing that's important is to be able to know enough of how long something will take and how complicated it is, so that you can evaluate what people are telling you they need in terms of the time and money to do the job you want them to do. And since things are ever changing, you're constantly renegotiating with them. I'm going to give you the picture on this day. You give me back your part of the work on this day. Oh, this changes. You have to be able to know enough when they say, well, I'm going to need 3 more days, to know, is that reasonable? Is it not reasonable? Are they even underestimating and they actually should have more time? Should you plan the crew to be bigger because you know there are going to be different things happening? So you need to understand how to manage the people doing the technical work, but not the programs that they use.
How do you pick up that understanding? So take a decision like whether to shoot in 2K or 4K or on film or on digital. Is that just through experience that you've had those conversations, or are there particular magazines or websites that you're trying to look at to keep abreast of things? How do you get prepared for those conversations?
I think a lot of, for me at least personally, it was having mentors, you know, having people who had been there before and explaining to me how they evaluated such situations, and also forging a real trusting relationship with the crews who are doing that work for you. Because nobody knows better than the person actually doing the work how long it's going to take them. So if you forge a real trusting relationship where they don't view you as the person just pulling the purse strings and trying to get them to do something faster for less money, they will, you know, I've sat next to an editor, I've sat next to a sound supervisor, mixer, colorist, and you see how long it takes them to do it. And you see who's talented, and different people can do things in different amounts of time, because it's all their individual skills. So I think it's about experience.
Yeah. Right, let's talk about the course then. So when you guys got started, Alison, Cynthia, there was, and Gemma, I guess as well, there was no obvious course to do that you could train to do this. Is that fair to say? So you guys have designed the course that you wish had existed when you were starting out or making your way. So maybe Cynthia, maybe explain what you think our ambition is for this course, and then I'll get Gemma to talk through what's involved in it.
So I think our ambition for this course is to spend time really teaching the whole post-production process and getting people prepared to have a career in post. That said, when you finish the course, you will not be ready to post-supervise. You probably, I hope and expect that you would be able to post-coordinate, but that also depends a bit on how much experience you have that you're bringing to the table before you go and take this course. And because, as Alison said, a lot of it has to do with relationships and experience. Some of this is going to be, for some people, completely new, and at the end of which they might be able to coordinate on a really simple show. There are going to be people who come in with a couple years of maybe having been a PA or having worked as an assistant editor or in some other fashion of the facet of the business, and they're going to take this course and probably with that extra knowledge be ready to be a coordinator on a bigger show. That said, they probably could post super a student film kind of thing where everybody's learning.
Cool. So Gemma, why don't you talk us through how it's delivered, you know, and the kind of length of commitment, but also then broadly what makes up the course. And then there's a few questions in the Q&A that I'm going to ask everybody.
I'll mute myself, always important. So this course is delivered over a long period. It's 27, 28 weeks long. We have got a mixture of webinars, in-person sessions, visits, including kind of visits to set and picture post facilities, sound post facilities, visual effects. We have also got some mastermind sessions planned. So, masterclass sessions, I apologize. So having big name people come and deliver information and good content to you so you can really learn from the best in the business. We've got the structure is generally that we take you through 5 different modules. Module 1 being pre-production and production, so kind of before post starts, the idea that you are what do you have to do before post-production actually starts, you know, who is everybody, different people's roles, what documentation are you looking for, what kind of thing are you going to get in terms of a DIT and dailies workflows. Trying to understand what's coming to you from production so that when you get into production and into post-production, that you have everything you need to be able to coordinate and to post-supervise. And general workflow stuff like, you know, kind of naming conventions, use of, you know, kind of different types of software that we use, security protocols. What are you looking for? What what needs to be done in order to get into post effectively? So then
how long is that module, Gemma? That's the first module, isn't it?
That's the first module. That's kind of I think 3 or 4 modules long. Sorry, 3 or 4 sessions long. So it's nice, and you get to go through things at a good pace so that you're not forced through too fast. You get a chance to learn everything properly.
Right.
So then moving into module 2, we are starting post-production. So what do you need to start post-production? What do you need to be able to get this production going? So what documentation do you need to produce in order to make post run smoothly? Workflow sessions, so practical workflow sessions to make sure that things like transportation or media distribution or storage or any of those kind of things, what do you need in terms of that? Technical workflow sessions, so, you know, what are you expecting? What asset types are there? What file formats? Film formats, aspect ratios, all the technical little bits and pieces that you need to know to be able to coordinate properly. So then once we've kind of gone over that, there will be, as we go through various tasks and outcomes that we require, so you'll be kind of tested along the way, made sure that you are properly absorbing the material that we're giving you, and again, given time to learn this material.
Those tasks will bring alive some of the stuff that you talk to about, and so just to make sure you fully understand and can apply what you've been told.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, so module 3.
So then module 3 is picture post, and that includes the offline picture editing, the online and the grade, and you know, video formats. What are you doing? What kind of equipment are you using? Editors logs, script notes, editorial, you know, rooms, tracking, all these things that need to be done in order for a smooth running post-production. Then moving on into kind of the online stage and the grading, delivery standards. What are all these different standards that we're talking about? Dolby Vision, HDR10. It's all about giving you the information that you need to be able to do your job. And in that, you're then able to look at the scheduling and the budgeting that comes along with it. Then we also have a little session on visual effects, and a section on visual effects. So, what are you dealing with when you're dealing with the visual effects on a show? What do you need to know from a post-production coordinator position, a post-supervisor position? What is coming at you from these visual effects departments, so that you know how to deal with it and how to process it. And again, there's more tasks, there's more outcomes, there's more testing as we go through to make sure that you really do absorb everything. So module 4 is moving on to sound, and that includes all the important parts. So you've got the actual editorial work, then ADR and Foley and mixing. What are the different standards again? What are you expecting in terms of, what are you expected to deal with as a post coordinator for ADR? And what does that mean in terms of scheduling it with the producer, the director, the actor, the studios, all of those things? Make it all come together so that we are, you are supplying the studio with what they need, the actor with what they need, director and the sound editor. What does everybody need from that situation? What do you need to provide them with? So it's quite in depth, is that part of the job. So it's part of our, it's quite an in-depth part of the course. Then again, you've got the delivery standards, Dolby Atmos, 5.1, stereo, foreign language dubbing. What is that? Budgeting, scheduling, tracking, all these things all need to be addressed in post. And music, obviously, music is important. I think we're going to try and visit a music studio as well, a music facility as well, so that you can really understand what people are doing when they're composing the music, and in terms of scheduling music and then contracting of orchestras, composers, source music, tracking, that side of it. So we really do try and take you as in-depth as we can. Then finally, the accounts and legal, and that includes deliverables, is module 5. And it's a really important part, being able to look at a budget, understand it, look at a cost report, understand it, doing your POs, getting bids, tracking documents, logging timesheets, crew hours, overtime, petty cash, all these things that we have to deal with, which are seemingly quite daunting, that we can actually break down and make a lot easier for the participants. And the contract law part is, kind of music clearances, product clearances. What do we need? Who do we need to speak to? And how do we facilitate that part of it? Because all of that information is all needed for your deliverables list. And it all really relates back to your deliverables. What are you looking for? What is your studio or your network or whomever has commissioned whatever project you're working on? What do they need from you? How do you provide that to them? And then moving forward and kind of into the end of the project, archiving and paperwork, cloud, vaults, that kind of stuff. So we really do take you from the start to the finish, and we try and give you as much information and a full education on post-production supervision.
That's really good. There's loads of good questions coming, both in the chat and on the Q&A, so I'm going to pick those up. But before I do, we talked a bit about how it's delivered partially online, partially face-to-face. Now, I wonder maybe whether Alison or Cynthia, you want to just say something about why that was important to us in terms of, making it accessible to people who aren't London-based.
Yeah, I can jump in, and it's, we are, as our HBO, I think I can say, doing post-production outside of London as well. And I think I really would encourage anybody who is based outside of London to apply for this course. We're doing post on projects in Manchester, in Liverpool, in Bristol at the moment. There's a lot of work happening in Cardiff. And we're continuing to do more and more productions outside of central London. The post hub in London is Soho, but there are just so many productions happening now. We can't just do everything in Soho. There are creators making things in other places. And we really wanted to have a course that was accessible to people who weren't based in London. So if you are outside of London, please apply. You can do most of the course online via Zoom. And then there are stipends available to help with travel costs to come into London for the sessions that are in person. We want to make sure that this is something that you don't shy away from due to cost.
Great. We're going to come back to scholarships at the end, but it's fair to say, is it, Alison, that this is an area of the film and TV industry where you can genuinely build a career and live in Glasgow or Cardiff or Bristol. Is that fair to say now?
Yes, I would definitely say that's fair to say. And I would also say that it's a good career path in general. I think it's, I was actually just coaching someone last week from my team who was saying, should I go in a more creative path or should I stay with post? And I said, look, my 2 cents about this has always been, if you want to feel secure in getting paid for something, make sure you have a piece of knowledge that people can't make up that they have. Post-production, you can't make it up. You have to know certain things. You have to have experience. This course should give you that knowledge that you can parlay into a paid career in the film and TV industry. That's really our goal. I feel quite confident with the increase in productions that we are having that there is a path also outside of London.
And so Cynthia, bring you in here. It's fair to say, is it a freelance world that people would be being prepared to work in? Is that?
Yes, I think that is something that we should say. What we're talking about is the freelance community. This is not about training to go on staff for HBO or Netflix or another organization like that. Those jobs are only a handful of them, and they're not growing. I mean, I can't speak to all of the companies, but those jobs don't come up very often. But the freelance world, and it depends sort of on your comfort level with freelance and what that means to you. And you are working from show to show. That said, my experience is that the people I deal with in London usually have so many offers that it's a challenge. And certainly when we were looking to hire someone in Cardiff, it was almost impossible to find people with sufficient background and knowledge to run a large show. We do have some people who are on their way up, but one of the things about the explosion in production has been that people have been forced to move up almost before they were ready. And so I think one of the things, and I saw this as a question in the chat, if you have post-super background, this course is likely to still be good for you. But it's something that I would, it's worth talking directly about. Certainly my expectation is it's even better if you do have some post background to take this course. You don't have to, but it'll be great. And if you do have post supervision background, the idea is coming out of this course, you'll have the skills to be able to work on bigger projects than you might have had exposure to otherwise.
Great. And it's also fair to say, when we talk about freelance, obviously in some aspects of production, that might only be a few days, but as a freelance person, as a post coordinator, that would be weeks worth of engagement, would it?
Or months, or months. I mean, oftentimes.
Or years.
I was going to say, oftentimes it goes, if you're on a series, you literally could be employed for, 5 years, 10 years, 12 years on the same series, because you go into production and then post, and then you're starting again in order to get it on for the following year. And so if there are multiple seasons of a show, you're with that same family of people continuously.
Yeah, Because I think that's one of the things that puts people off a freelance life, is the feeling like they're constantly looking for work. But I think it feels to me like in this area, that's a kind of once a year, once every 9 months sort of thing at most, if you're on bigger shows.
Yeah, like a small film may have a post-production period of, 5 to 6 months, for instance, and you may not be so involved in the pre-production period. Maybe you did a week or two of work to do the budget and the schedule. You go away for the shoot, you come back for 5 or 6 months. That would be quite fast. I would say going into this as a lifestyle choice, you have to be comfortable with the uncertainty. The post is much more secure. And I think it's a really good point, John. It's much more secure than production. You're not, doing a day player, job here on set for a couple of days. If you get a job, it's really going to carry you through. But I've certainly had jobs, you think you've got a big show. One was with HBO. I thought I had a big show and we were shooting, and then we stepped down and we had to pack up, and that was the end of that 7 weeks into the shoot. So they took great care of me though, so no hard feelings. But it is a reality that you have to manage your finances and your expectations to know that it isn't a full-time contract.
And it's from a work-life balance perspective, I mean, quite a lot of people are put off working in the film and TV industry because they've got young children or a family life of some kind, or complicated situations where they can't do 5 a.m. till 7 o'clock at night every day on location. Is it more reasonable in the post area? I'm sure it's still hard work, but is it more reliable, the sort of hours that you do?
Yes, I would say it is more reliable as like a 9 to 6 or 9 to 7 kind of life. But I would say it's very important when you're interviewing for a job to really dig into that exact question. And that's what I dig into when I interview people for projects that I'm staffing up. What is their situation? Because there are certain people, you just have to pair them with the right project. If you have a big, like on The Witcher, it's a huge show. It is much more than a 9 to 6 operation. It is a lifestyle, right? So there are different projects call for different types of time commitments, but for sure, as a blanket statement, it's much more flexible than production is. You do not have to show up at 5 a.m. You don't have to travel as much. It's much more amenable to having a life as well.
There's a few questions in the Q&A button, which I'll kind of broadly summarize as, I'm working in another aspect of post, like in sound or in editing. Is this a good course for me to do?
I don't know. It depends what you're looking for. So this is, well, I believe that having knowledge is always good. My hope is that if you're taking this course, it's because you want to go into post-production management. And having an editorial background, there are lots of post-supers who I know who came from editorial either as an editor or assistant editor and made the transition because they felt that the work better suited them either creatively or temperamentally. But it is a course that we hope that when you come out, that you will want to be in post-production supervision.
So if you want to stay as an editor, don't do this course because you want to learn more about post. But if you're an assistant editor and you're now thinking about actually post management is what I want to do, that would be a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then a couple of questions about how much time it's going to take, Gemma. So it's 1 evening a week, isn't it, in terms of the talk sessions, but then people will have other bits of reading or preparation or bits of assignment work to do. So it's kind of like 3 hours of the talk session and another 3 hours of prep and reading and stuff like that.
I would say yes, absolutely, yeah. I would pitch it around that mark anyway. So it would be something that could be done alongside another job.
We expect people who are doing this to have either a job or a family, life that they're trying to balance alongside it. So yeah, absolutely.
It's not full-time study. This is a course which can be done in, as you said, 6 hours or so a week.
Got a couple of questions of people saying, is it possible to do the course completely online? And at the moment, it isn't, is it? We are gonna get people together because we think that that's a key part of it.
I think there's, I don't know, what Alison and Cynthia think, but I think there's something magical about bringing people together sometimes and letting them forge relationships and ask questions and yeah, come together.
But I think it's fair to say this is our first time of running this course. So if we think it can be equally done online later on, then we might do that. So do keep your eye on it. But for this first run that starts in January, it's got that mix, that blended approach. We've answered that question, which is about, is it possible to build a career in the regions, which was a resounding yes. You can have a great life in post in Cardiff or Glasgow or Bristol. Where might people find their first job on completing the course? So if they've done the course, we talked about they might leave and they might get hired at the more junior level of a PA, is that right? A post-production assistant, or they might be fortunate, depending on their previous experience, to get a coordinator job. Where would they find those jobs?
I mean, my hope is that we will have, at the end of the course, conversations be able to see your resumes and all of that, so that Alison and I will get the opportunity to meet everybody. And so I think there will be a good opportunity for that. There are also, as Gemma mentioned, she's creating a community for post supers and trying to have that as a hub for finding job opportunities as well. I think, my hope, as I say, is that people come out of this and they're ready to be a post coordinator, and you coordinate it depends on the person and the show, but you coordinate for a while and then go on to a post super position. And often, once you find that first job, you're part of a team, and the leader on that team brings their team with them whenever possible. Certainly we try to do that on our shows. If a lead has someone that they like working with and they're good, then why wouldn't you do that?
And because it's where you might start off as a coordinator, somebody was saying, what would your responsibilities be distinctly as a coordinator rather than as a supervisor? Alison, do you want to pick that one up maybe?
Sure, yeah. I think the number one thing when you say coordinators, you think of ADR, which is when you re-record the actor's voice in post-production, either because you're putting a new creative line in their mouth, maybe over the back of their shoulder, or the quality was not good on set and you need to replace it in post-production. So the coordinator, it's a huge skill, needs to be able to schedule, deal with all the actors' agents, the studios, the technical aspects. They coordinate that whole process of recording those lines. They usually are responsible for the credits. And then each post supervisor will assign different other tasks to them as well. Maybe stock footage, licensing, that sort of stuff, taking care of a lot of the day-to-day organization of the crew, maybe certain schedule distros, but they're very much the organizational backbone of the post supervisor.
Cool. Somebody's just written, what is being done to increase diversity in post? So this is part of that, isn't it? This is part. So maybe should we talk about the scholarships and the kind of, you mentioned briefly the stipends.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the reasons for doing this is to hopefully increase diversity in post-production. And therefore, both Warner Media and Netflix have put together a sizable sum of money to underwrite the cost of this course for people who qualify as coming from diverse backgrounds.
Yeah. So it's very possible if you get selected to be on the course, there's sufficient money for lots of the people to be funded to do it and not to have to be out of pocket. So we really don't want money to be a barrier to people applying. couple more things. Somebody's asking, Alison and Cynthia, will you be mentoring students on the course? I think they're so excited to talk to you. Are you planning to be involved once the course is up and running?
Yes, we will be. I wouldn't say we're planning, well, speak for myself. I don't think we would be one-on-one mentoring the whole course. That will be in Gemma's capable hands. But I think we will make guest appearances to the course. I think I've seen that in the plans. And then, like Cynthia said, at the end of it, we really want to know the graduates of this course. This is very much being born out of a need that we have for more qualified post-management professionals in the UK, and we want to know you and hopefully hire you at some point in the future. So yes, we will all know each other.
Is there an age limit? Somebody says, I've been an editor for 25 years, maybe I'm too old to be a post supervisor.
There is absolutely no age limit. It's really about attitude and energy and what you want to do. Different people do it differently. I mean, I certainly, when I was a freelancer, I think part of the reason why I got the job that I have now is because I was willing to deliver, back in the day, tapes at 2 a.m. Now you push a button and send a file, which is much better than driving across the city, because we didn't have a budget and couldn't get, actually back then, people to do deliveries at 2 a.m. from the cutting room. So it really depends on, how hard you want to work and what you want to do. And for me, age brings wisdom and knowledge. It's not a drawback.
No, absolutely. And at the NFTS, actually, I should say, our average age of a student is kind of 30, but we've got 21-year-olds, and I've got a really brilliant woman on our natural history course who's 60. So we have people from a whole wide range of backgrounds and ages. Somebody asked, and I'll probably answer this, should we apply for a bursary from the NFTS at the same time as applying for the course? And you don't need to do that. You apply for the course, and then you'll immediately if you're selected for interview, you'll be invited to apply for a bursary. We try and separate the two things. So if you don't have the money, don't let that put you off, just apply, and we'll make it work with you if you're selected for the course. Somebody also asked if you get access to all the NFTS resources in terms of the library and masterclasses and things like that. And yeah, that's absolutely the case. That like last week we had a masterclass with Charlie Brooker. On Friday we had a masterclass with Patty Jenkins. 15 minutes after she found out that Wonder Woman 2 had been slipped to December, she did a masterclass with us. So yeah, you'll get access to all of those in addition to the course that you're doing with Gemma. I'm just scanning through. I think we've covered a large part of it. There's a few questions about practical work experience, and I think it's fair to say we're not offering that as a kind of guarantee on the course, but you're going to meet a lot of people on the course who potentially could offer you that opportunity. So it is really down to you to kind of make contact with people and use the course as a jumping off to do it. And that will also depend on whether you can actually give the time to do that, because potentially you're working and actually doing work experience is a problem. But we won't be taking that many people, which is one of the questions, maybe between 12 and 15. So you'll get a lot of personal care and attention from Gemma and the school on those kinds of things, if that's something you want to do.
John, I see that someone was asking about being a post producer. So yes, I would call that a lead. We don't tend to use the credit post producer. We'll possibly talk about someone as being a post producer, but yes, the goal of this is, as you work your way up the management chain in post, when I talk about a first or a lead, that person is also referred to as a post producer.
Cool.
There is also very confusing, in the facilities, they tend to call people who work as the coordinators in the facilities, they tend to call them post producers as well. So I think it's worth saying that this is for freelance post-production supervisors and coordinators, and not to become a post producer in a facility.
Yeah,
Although having said that, many of the skills are the same, and some of my best post supers came from facilities. So to my mind, yes, these are the skills that you need as a freelance post supervisor. And yes, they are different than working in a post facility, but that's another stream of job. If, for example, you found yourself at the end of this not wanting to be freelance anymore and were looking for a staff job, that would be the more likely place to find a staff job. Because with the knowledge coming out of this course, most of the facilities would be thrilled to have you.
Well prepared for that, wouldn't you? And then somebody's asking, will you help us find work if on graduation? And yeah, absolutely. The motto of the NFTS is our credits tell the story. And so it's absolutely in our interest to help you find work. We don't submit the applications for you, but we'll definitely be talking to our contacts and making sure they're aware that you're available. But the very fact you've got, you know, Warner Media and HBO and Netflix already committed to looking at people who are coming out of this course should give you some confidence that people are going to be interested in you when you finish. There's so many questions about virtual production, questions about all sorts of things, which I'm not sure we've completely got time for, but I might just ask Alison, Cynthia, maybe just anything you want to say in summary as kind of appealing to people to, you know, why they might want to do this. Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I would say, as you can probably tell from our rapport on this call, I've known Cynthia for a while, and I think maybe that's a testament to the post community that is also, I would say, really a worldwide post community that I feel very privileged to be a part of, and I think it's a real joy on a day-to-day basis to work in this industry. You forge deep relationships with people. You know, it's a smaller group than is in production, so we tend to know each other and support each other, and you go through different roles in your life, and the people are the people. Doesn't matter what you're doing at a certain point in time. You know, my relationship with Cynthia is the same now I'm at Netflix. I was freelance when I was at different companies, so that is, I think, a really important part. And all, you know, the questions about, you know, where would you find a job? It's about building those relationships with people, meeting people, proving your worth, coming through for others. And I think it's a great industry to be a part of. So I would encourage you, if post management is really where you see yourself, this would be a great start.
Great. I think you want to add, Cynthia, to that.
I think Alison has done a beautiful job, as is usually the case. It is about people. It is about problem solving, and there is a real I mean, one of the things that I love, like Alison, I've been working in this business for years, and for me, I've been at HBO for 26 years. It never gets old because every project is different, because every script is different, every story is different, and you get to work with amazing and wonderful and interesting people. And while there are definitely some of the large personalities that you've heard horror stories about, I'm happy to say that in my experience, they've been few and far between. And really, it's about getting experience to work with lots of different people in different projects, and therefore it never feels old or stale.
Yeah, no, I agree. So in summary, just to kind of sum up, we're a couple of weeks away from the application deadline. So the application deadline is the 3rd of October. So there's still time to apply. If you've got queries we haven't answered through this webinar, then do just ask them via the NFTS website, and we'll make sure we respond to them. But there's a lot of questions about what does the kind of perfect applicant look like, and what experience do I have to have, and am I experienced enough? And I would really encourage you to just, you know, there's a kind of cliche, which is you've got to be in it to win it. And I would just say, apply, try and communicate your passion for post management, and why you want to do it, and why you think you're a good candidate for it, because there is no perfect candidate. We want a whole diversity of people in every way to do this course. And it's certainly something we're absolutely passionate about and think can be built over a number of years to become a really important entry route into what is such a big area of the film and TV industry, and that hasn't had a kind of entry route clearly marked out before. So do apply. And as we said, there's lots of financial support available. Warner Media, HBO and Netflix have been incredibly generous in putting money up to support candidates, both in terms of fees, but also in terms of stipends to help people who are needing to travel or cover other costs. So if money is the thing that's making you think, it's just not for me, don't let that get on top of you. Put your application in, and if you get offered a place, we will absolutely help you make it work. We'll want to make it work with you. If you kind of share with us kind of why you need that help and how we might help you best. I think the recording of this we'll make available to people so that they can catch up if one or two people who joined a bit late, and we'll send this out to people. But thanks so much for coming along. At one point there was like 115 people. We're at like 99 now. So thanks for coming along. We hope it's been useful. Thanks to Alison and to Cynthia and to Gemma for their time in making it happen. And have a lovely evening. I think that's it. Thanks so much, everybody. Oh, there are lots of people saying nice things in the chat. So there you go. You can sit and read those for a minute. Thanks, everybody. All the best.